My husband, Elias, is usually reserved and dislikes social gatherings, yet this time, he took the initiative to be a groomsman. Upon arrival at the wedding, I was taken aback to discover that the bridesmaid was none other than his first love, Serafina. During the ceremony, he not only clinked glasses with her but also intertwined arms and even went down on one knee as part of the festivities. I felt my heart sink, my eyes burned with unspoken words, and I needed an explanation. But all Elias offered was a dismissive glance and a cold response. It's just a wedding tradition. Groomsmen and bridesmaids are supposed to have fun. You should be more understanding. We just wanted to relive some old memories. Are you really going to be upset over this? While he was indulging in nostalgia, reminiscing about an ideal past, he completely disregarded the fact that for 7 years, he never gave me the wedding I had hoped for. In the past, I would have swallowed my feelings and moved on. But this time, something inside me refused to be silenced. You wouldn't understand since we never had a wedding, I murmured, trying to keep my composure. Elias glanced at me through the rearview mirror as we drove to the venue. It's a day of celebration. Try not to overthink it. I let out a quiet sigh, feeling an inexplicable hollowness settle inside me. Elias, a dedicated doctor, rarely takes time off. I had spent an entire year looking forward to a trip together for Thanksgiving. But he chose this wedding instead. As we stopped at a gas station, I absent-mindedly opened a bag in the back seat. Inside was a pair of elegant flats, new, pristine, and thoughtfully chosen. For a moment, my heart softened. He knows how much my feet hurt in heels, I thought, touched by the small gesture. Thank you, I said, forcing a smile. I really like them. Elias looked at me, his face unreadable. But when I tried them on, my heart sank again. They were 2 sizes too small. A lump formed in my throat as realization dawned. He hadn't bought them for me. When we reached the venue, the truth confirmed itself. Serafina, draped in an ethereal white gown, walked gracefully toward Elias. She smiled at me, her voice gentle yet cutting. Isadora, welcome to our wedding. A sharp pain shot through my chest. I swallowed hard, steadying my voice. You must be the bridesmaid, right? I asked, deliberately louder than necessary. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Is she really the bridesmaid? Someone whispered. She looks like she's the one getting married, another chimed in. Serafina's face paled. She wavered slightly, and before I could react, Elias stepped forward, shielding her from the judgmental stares. His voice was sharp. Isadora, you're a journalist. Are you trying to manipulate public opinion against me now? Bitterness coated my throat. I had done nothing, yet I was the one being scrutinized. The groom, Finnegan, hurried over, hands pressed together in an attempt to defuse the tension. Come on, Isadora. Don't take things so seriously. It's just old friends reminiscing. It's a special day. Old friends. As if that justified everything. I clenched my fists, forcing down the storm of emotions raging inside me. Later, during the door games, Finnegan handed a pair of glasses filled with liquor to Elias and Serafina. Let's see how well you match, he said with a grin. They blushed, crossed arms, and sipped their drinks, their faces inching closer. The moment their lips brushed, something inside me snapped. For 7 years, Elias had refused to drink, claiming that, as a doctor, it would affect his steady hands. Yet here he was, willingly downing not just his drink but also Serafina's. The crowd cheered as Finnegan dangled a piece of red bean cake between them, encouraging them to take a bite together. Serafina hesitated, then leaned in. Elias followed. The cake melted between their lips. I saw it, how she subtly licked the remnants off his lips before he pulled away, startled. My fingers dug into my palms, but I managed to keep my face neutral. Finnegan laughed. Congratulations! You passed. People clapped, but the sound felt distant, as if I was submerged underwater. My legs felt like lead as I stepped back, withdrawing into the shadows of the crowd. Elias turned suddenly, his expression flickering with guilt, hesitation, and something else I couldn't decipher. I forced a smile. He exhaled, relieved, and returned my smile. And in that moment, I remembered the man I once fell in love with. The doctor tirelessly working in disaster-stricken areas. The man who had once seemed like a beacon of light in the darkest of times. I had sacrificed so much to stand by his side. I had given up my own dreams of a wedding, of romance, of attention. And for what? The ceremony moved forward, and soon, it was time for the groom to retrieve the bride. Finnegan handed a bouquet to Elias, who, without hesitation, knelt before Serafina. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "I do." Something inside me shattered. For a split second, silence enveloped the venue. Even the actual bride, waiting with an expectant smile, looked frozen in shock. Finnegan laughed awkwardly. "Relax, everyone. Elias was just demonstrating for me." He took the bouquet from Serafina and proposed again to his own bride, but the mood had already shifted. The bride's expression was strained, and an air of unease settled over the guests. "We should get going," Finnegan finally announced, ushering everyone toward the wedding cars. As the crowd dispersed, I stood there, motionless, watching Elias walk away without a second glance. And for the first time, I let myself admit the truth. I had been fooling myself all along. When we reached the wedding cars downstairs, Finnegan took charge, instructing everyone to board in an orderly manner. I stood still, waiting for Elias. As the best man, he should have ensured that my husband and I were seated together. Just then Serafina, her eyes brimming with tears, tugged at his sleeve and whispered something. Without hesitation, Elias lifted her up in his arms. Under everyone's stunned gazes, they got into the lead Rolls-Royce. The bride and Finnegan froze in shock. With a dark expression, the bride let the bouquet slip from her fingers, her voice laced with disbelief. "They took my wedding car. Where exactly am I supposed to sit?" Finnegan coughed awkwardly, offering a weak smile. "The Bentley behind is quite elegant. We can decorate the front with the bouquet." She cut him off with a sharp laugh. "Finnegan, what's going on with those two? Who is actually getting married today?" "If you don't give me an explanation," she warned, "I am not getting in that car." Faced with her furious demand, Finnegan looked between me and her, at a complete loss. The window of the Rolls-Royce rolled down, and Serafina leaned out, her tone gentle but firm. "Finnegan, why aren't you all getting in? It's almost time." Finnegan forced a chuckle. "My wife is a little upset. I'll take care of it." The bride clenched her fists, her anger barely contained. "Forget it. I'm not getting married anymore." She bent down, about to remove her high heels, ready to bolt, when Finnegan panicked. "Wait. Listen to me. Both couples are getting married today." The air grew heavy with silence. "Elias and Serafina were each other's first love," Finnegan continued, his voice softer now. "They spent 8 years together before fate separated them. As their friend, I thought I could give them one last chance." The bride's face twisted in shock. "Elias wanted to use this day to finally give Serafina the wedding they never had," Finnegan admitted. "Their love was profound. Unforgettable." His voice wavered slightly. "I just thought you could be a little more understanding." The bride's expression remained unreadable. Finnegan looked at me, silently pleading for help. With so many guests watching, causing a scene would only worsen things. Finally, the bride exhaled sharply. She picked up the bouquet and muttered, "Fine. I'll take the Bentley." I said nothing as I got into the last car, my thoughts a whirlwind. Pain is like a needle piercing the skin. Sharp at first, but you grow numb to it. Today is Elias's wedding. As his wife, how could I not be present? Upon arrival, the venue was bustling with excitement. Confetti cannons fired, ribbons danced in the air. "Who arranged all this?" the bride snapped, clearly flustered. I said I didn't want any of it. I had woken up at 5 in the morning for my makeup. But now, looking at her, I knew she felt unprepared. Finnegan chuckled nervously. Serafina said weddings need a sense of ceremony. Serafina, calm and composed, stepped forward. "Would you like me to help touch up your makeup?" The bride turned away sharply. "No need." She stormed off to the dressing room, slamming the door behind her. With the commotion momentarily settled, I watched as Elias knelt by the car, carefully slipping a pair of flat shoes onto Serafina's feet. "The ground here is uneven," he murmured. "It's safer this way." I glanced down at my own high heels, suddenly feeling an ache in my feet. My eyes stung. I retreated to the women's restroom, splashing cold water on my face, willing myself to steady my emotions. Moments later, Serafina walked in, fixing her makeup beside me. "We were in love since high school," she said softly. "We had a dream, to go from school uniforms to wedding attire. But life got in the way." She paused, glancing at me through the mirror. "You've been married for 7 years without a wedding." Then she smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Now he's giving me one. Right in front of you. I hope you can handle it." Something twisted deep inside me. "Elias always said you were pure and kind," I rasped. "Untouched by the world. But doesn't he realize how cruel you can be?" Serafina shrugged. "Pain is inevitable. But if you want my advice, either let go of his hand or hold on to his heart." The words hit like a punch to the chest. For the first time, clarity pierced through my turmoil. As I stepped out, I spotted Elias waiting against the wall. He looked up, his brows furrowing slightly. "She's still inside changing." I assumed he was waiting for Serafina. Elias hesitated, then sighed. "Don't be mad. I'll take some time off this year. We can go on a trip together, okay?" Before I could respond, his gaze shifted past me. I turned to see Serafina walking toward us, her wedding dress flowing elegantly around her. Without a word, she reached out her hand. Elias stepped forward instantly, linking his arm with hers. They walked past me, leaving me rooted in place. The bride emerged from the dressing room, her expression unreadable as she watched them. "You're really going to stand there and watch your husband marry his first love?" she asked, almost in disbelief. I let out a slow breath. "I came here for one reason." I looked toward Elias and Serafina as they made their way down the aisle, white rose petals swirling around them. And finally I understood. He never loved me. The wedding march played, and the bride stepped forward, ready to take the stage. There was no more time for words. But when I looked up, I realized, the groom standing on the altar wasn't Finnegan. It was Elias. The solemn tune suddenly transformed into a melancholic love song. To love deeply is to be entangled forever. In the spotlight, Serafina moved gracefully down the aisle, radiant under the falling petals. Tears blurred my vision as I watched Elias meet her halfway, solemnly taking her hand. No rings were exchanged, only old trinkets, letters, and memories from their past. I inhaled sharply and stepped onto the stage. "Isadora, don't make trouble," Elias pleaded. "We just want to make up for lost time." I looked at him, my expression unreadable. "You've kept our wedding promise pending for 7 years," I murmured. "Now you break it completely." Slowly, I slid my wedding ring off my finger, placing it onto the tray of old keepsakes. "I now declare, you may become husband and wife." For a fleeting second, panic flickered in Elias's eyes. But the moment was already slipping away. The bride stepped forward confidently, pulled down her veil, and draped it over Serafina's head. "I give this wedding to you." I found my car in the outdoor parking lot, ready to leave when, out of nowhere, the front passenger door swung open. The bride, still in her wedding dress, slipped in effortlessly, as if she had planned this all along. Looking out the window, she spotted Finnegan searching frantically for her. With an exasperated sigh, she crossed her arms and muttered, "Just drive. I need to get out of here." Before I could process what was happening, Elias arrived, scanning the lot. The moment she saw me sitting in the driver's seat with the runaway bride beside me, her expression darkened. "Isadora, if you want to be reckless, that's your choice. But must you ruin someone else's wedding too?" Ignoring her, I stepped on the gas and drove off. We had gone at least a couple of kilometers before I realized my unexpected passenger hadn't given me a destination. Glancing at her, I saw tears silently streaming down her cheeks as she bit her lip, struggling to hold them back. She wiped her face stubbornly and whispered, "Can you turn off the music? It's just too much." Without a word, I turned it off. Strangely, that only made her sob harder. "So, Finnegan wanted some kind of modern wedding?" She scoffed through her tears. "No banquet, no parents. Just a quiet little ceremony as if we were hiding something." A bitter smile crossed her lips as she continued, "Turns out, he just didn't want anyone to question why I had to share my wedding day with someone else." I handed her a tissue and softly said, "Elias isn't my husband anymore." She barely heard me, lost in her own pain. Finnegan. What was he thinking? It's like letting someone else use our wedding bed on the same night. Something about her pain resonated with me. Maybe it was because I understood betrayal all too well. I pulled over in a quiet spot, giving her space to let everything out. After what felt like an eternity, she took a deep breath, her emotions settling. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this," she murmured. "It's not that I love Finnegan so much. I'm just furious. I waited so long for this day, and now it's a joke." Her makeup was a mess, and she pulled out her phone, showing me a QR code while still sniffling. Today made me realize something. Elias, Finnegan, their whole circle, they're not normal. We should cut our losses and start fresh. I really like you. Add me. After adding Ophelia as a friend, I drove her home. By the time I returned to my place, the sky had already darkened. Elias was likely still with Serafina, comforting her. It was clear, he wouldn't be coming back tonight. I wasted no time. Packing my belongings swiftly, I left a signed divorce agreement on the coffee table before stepping out for good. Over the years, I had sacrificed a lot for our marriage. I sold my house near the TV station, investing in a new home in the city center, all to accommodate Elias's demanding hospital schedule. But now, that house was just a museum of broken promises. I didn't even fight to keep it. I only asked for my initial investment and its appreciation value. After hours of packing, exhaustion hit me like a wave. Sprawling onto the bed of my new apartment, I fell into a restless sleep, barely having the energy to change. Barely 10 minutes later, my phone rang. The sound was jarring, almost ominous. I groggily answered, only to hear Elias's cold voice on the other end. "Isadora, haven't you caused enough trouble?" I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. "Did you see the divorce agreement I left?" Silence. For a moment, I thought he'd hung up. But then, his voice, lower and more measured, came through. "I've been thinking. You're right. We haven't taken your feelings into account. Let's talk. Come home and we can figure this out." In 7 years of marriage, I had heard him hang up too many times when things didn't go his way. But this time, something was different. He was backing down. And yet I felt nothing. "I'm done talking, Elias," I said, voice steady. "If the division of assets is fine, let's finalize the divorce." His breathing sharpened. "Isadora, don't push me. If you refuse the way out I'm offering, we'll really get divorced." A humorless laugh escaped me. Wasn't that the point? Elias didn't call again. Days later, as I rushed into work, I unexpectedly ran into Elias and Serafina outside the TV station. Elias hesitated, But Serafina walked straight toward me, her eyes red and puffy. "Isadora," she started, voice trembling. "I heard. You're really divorcing Elias?" I glanced at her, unmoved. "Why does that concern you?" She sniffled. "You misunderstood us. Elias and we loved each other once, but we both have our own families now. We've never crossed the line." I checked my watch. I didn't have time for this. "You don't need to explain. I've already stepped back. You should do the same." I smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "Now that I've let go, maybe it's time for you to divorce your husband too." Serafina's expression froze, caught off guard. Elias finally spoke. "Isadora, I brought Serafina here to apologize. She's innocent in all of this." I met his gaze with quiet defiance. "If you're so desperate to prove your innocence, hurry up and file for the divorce. I won't wait forever." Without another word, I turned and walked away. That weekend, I waited for Elias to finalize the divorce arrangements. Whether he was consulting a lawyer to protect his assets or simply delaying, I didn't know. Not that it mattered. I had an important assignment coming up. An interview with the renowned entrepreneur, Mr. Whitaker, in Chicago. A fresh start was already waiting for me. After coordinating with Mr. Whitaker's assistant, we had to rearrange the schedule multiple times due to his busy itinerary before finally settling on a confirmed time and location for the interview. The next morning, dressed in a professional business suit, I headed straight to Mr. Whitaker's lavish estate. Upon arrival, his assistant greeted me in the garden with a composed expression and said, "Mr. Whitaker is still finishing his Tai Chi session. Isadora, please have a cup of coffee while you wait." As soon as he left, an unexpected figure appeared before me. Serafina, dressed in casual loungewear, stormed toward me with an unmistakable glare. "Isadora, how dare you show up here?" I sighed internally, unwilling to be dragged into unnecessary drama. "I'm here for Mr. Whitaker, not for you," I replied calmly. My words seemed to infuriate her further. Without warning, Serafina grabbed the cup of coffee and flung its contents at me. "You are not welcome here. Leave." Wiping the coffee from my face, I stood up swiftly. Before I could react, a sharp and authoritative voice cut through the tension. "Serafina, have you lost your mind? How dare you treat my guest this way?" Mr. Whitaker approached with an icy glare, his assistant rushing to my side. "I'm terribly sorry, Isadora. Please use the restroom inside to clean up." As I dried my hair and composed myself, muffled sobs echoed from the hall. Serafina's pleas were followed by a sudden sharp slap. "You're nothing but a mistress trying to climb the ranks. Don't get ahead of yourself," Mr. Whitaker's furious voice boomed. "There are plenty of women out there. If I wanted, I could replace you at any moment." "I'm sorry. Please, it won't happen again." Serafina whimpered desperately. Despite her arrogance, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for her. Mr. Whitaker had a pristine public image, known for his philanthropy and charm, but behind closed doors, he was a man of many mistresses and a cruel temper. Serafina, as insufferable as she was, had willingly entangled herself in this toxic relationship. After a brief interview, I quickly wrapped things up and prepared to leave. As my cameraman packed up the equipment, Serafina quietly approached me. "I bet you're enjoying this, seeing me in such a mess," she sneered, her swollen face barely concealing her distress. "I know why you're really here. You want to run off and tell Elias that I'm after Mr. Whitaker's wealth." I let out a soft chuckle, shaking my head. "What's amusing is that I never pick up scraps from the ground," I said, meeting her gaze. "But the dog who grabbed them feels the need to guard them." Leaving Mr. Whitaker's mansion, I received a call from Ophelia. "Is work finally done? Tonight, I'm taking you somewhere perfect for women in their 30s. After this exhausting interview, I had 3 days of vacation ahead, and the thought of unwinding sounded appealing. I couldn't help but wonder, Was this paradise a luxurious spa? A high-end bar filled with handsome men? As it turned out, Ophelia led me to a bustling street market near the University District. I felt a bit embarrassed about my earlier assumptions. However, her mischievous wink suggested she had more planned. Lots of delicious food here, but we have to hurry. The Sports Academy guys start their night runs at 7 p.m. sharp. As we reached the university's track field, I found myself momentarily stunned. The night air was cool, but the young men jogging under the stadium lights radiated an undeniable energy. Their toned physiques glistened with sweat, making my cheeks flush involuntarily. Ophelia smirked. My cousin's in there somewhere. I'll have him introduce you to some friends. I had never considered younger men before, but their enthusiasm was infectious. Before I knew it, my face was burning. Just as Ophelia finished posting about our outing on social media, my phone buzzed incessantly. It was Elias. Isadora, you're over 30, and you're hanging around college kids? Have you lost all sense of dignity? His words instantly soured my mood. Elias, I've already decided. We're getting a divorce. What I do is none of your business. His anger barely contained, he scoffed. That's right, we're getting divorced. Why should I care? But his tone betrayed his frustration. Then don't call me, I said flatly. Just prepare the necessary documents. I'll meet you at the Civil Affairs Bureau next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Wednesday arrived, and at the last moment, Elias finally showed up. His face was drawn, his usual arrogance replaced by something unfamiliar, hesitation. As I turned to walk into the bureau, he grabbed my wrist tightly. Isadora, are you really sure about this? After today, there's no turning back. I pulled my hand away. We have an appointment. Don't waste time. I had spent 2 years chasing Elias, but our divorce was finalized in 10 minutes. Stepping out into the open air, I stared at the sky. It seemed bluer than before. Isadora, is this what you wanted? Elias's voice was hoarse. I didn't look back. You better not regret it, because it won't change anything, he muttered. Raising a hand in farewell, I walked away without a second glance. When I told Ophelia I was officially divorced, she let out a triumphant laugh. Finally! Now I can take action. Ophelia had been saving all the footage from that night with Serafina, waiting for the right moment. Now that I was free, she had no reason to hold back. Without hesitation, she posted everything online. Netizens reacted swiftly, tearing apart Serafina and Elias. What is this? Some messed-up soap opera. Best man and maid of honor playing a love game in their late 30s? Give me a break. Guess the best man saved the groom's life. So does the bride have to return the favor? The scandal spread like wildfire. As a journalist, I was the first to hear of Mr. Whittaker's sudden divorce. Soon after, Elias and Serafina announced their engagement with a grand proposal and a flashy diamond ring. Yet, to my amusement, the online response was lackluster. Barely anyone congratulated them. Ophelia and I exchanged knowing glances. Some people chase illusions of love, but in the end, all they find is an empty stage with no audience to applaud. Why hasn't Finnegan come to support his 2 old friends? I asked curiously. Ophelia gave a knowing smile and said, Ever since I decided to break up, Finnegan has regretted it. I heard they haven't spoken in ages, I remarked. As she spoke, she absent-mindedly checked her messages and suddenly noticed a reconciliation note from Finnegan that had landed in her spam folder. She read it aloud with a mix of amusement and disbelief. Coco, I finally realize I was wrong. Back then, I was blinded by loyalty, and now I see that I was the fool. Elias and Serafina are happy, but I've lost even more. I lost you. Ophelia and I exchanged glances before bursting into laughter. Just then, a trending video appeared on the screen, grabbing our attention. The title was scandalous. The bridesmaid turns out to be the billionaire's ex-wife. The video was a whirlwind of drama. The comments were ruthless. Unbelievable. So spoiled, and now look where it got her. Serafina had caused quite the scene at the wedding, drawing attention for dominating the event rather than celebrating the couple. And soon enough, people started digging into her past. Alongside an infamous video of her sending a sultry message to Mr. Whittaker while wearing a lace camisole, clips surfaced of her desperately pleading for forgiveness after her affair was exposed. "Honey, please, I beg you. Forgive me. I swear I'll never see that doctor again." The response? A thunderous round of applause, followed by a single brutal command, "Get lost." "What right do you have to betray me and then crawl back?" Another voice scorned. "Only fools would waste their time on someone like you." As Serafina's past was laid bare for the world to see, I decided to check Elias's social media. Unsurprisingly, he had deleted all posts about his proposal and their engagement ring. At the television station where I worked, Serafina, now disgraced and humiliated, stormed in, her rage fixated on me. "Isadora! You must have a grudge against me," she accused, her voice trembling with anger. "You used your position to ruin me. You'll pay for this." Before she could lunge at me, a tall figure stepped in between us. "Serafina, do you still have the audacity to cause trouble for Isadora?" Elias's voice was sharp, devoid of the gentleness he once had for her. Serafina stared at him, stunned. "Elias, you're taking her side? We're about to get married, and you would treat me like this?" Elias's expression darkened as he forcefully pushed her away. "Marry you? You're delusional. If you hadn't destroyed my 7-year marriage with Isadora, we would have had a happy life together. Everything that's happening to you now, you brought upon yourself. Don't blame others." Serafina's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're abandoning me? After everything?" Elias turned to me, his gaze filled with desperation. "Isadora, I know you did all this hoping I'd come to my senses. I was blind before, but I swear I'll cherish you from now on." A shiver ran down my spine at his words. "Who said I was waiting for you? What exactly do you think I did for you?" His face stiffened, then he pressed on. "If it wasn't you who exposed Serafina, then who was it?" I chuckled. "People always believe the paths they didn't take are filled with flowers, Elias. Only after losing something do you realize its value." He looked at me with regret, his voice barely above a whisper. "Isadora, I didn't understand before. I took you for granted. But now I see. I had the best, and I lost it." I smiled slightly. "It wasn't me." All of Serafina's secrets were exposed by Mr. Whittaker's ex-wife. Elias looked devastated. "So, there's no chance?" I shook my head. "Elias, I cherish what I have when I have it. And once it's gone, I never look back." Seeing his dejected expression, I gave him one final glance and spoke the last words he would ever hear from me. "I hope you understand this, and stop interfering in my life. Because unlike you, I don't romanticize the past. And I never make the same mistake twice."